welcome everybody. So the first of its kind. This is a webinar arranged, as you're all well aware, for the introduction of Ecrotek and the AIRR relationship, and more so about learning a little bit about the background of Ecrotek, the business, and what the product range can offer you as independents. To give you a little bit of background, Dave Beecham and I and Kane actually met with Ecrotek about 9 or 10 months ago, and looked at this as an opportunity for both AIRR and you guys as independents as an addition to the vast range of products independence. Different is that ability to have a go and have a crack at a new range of products, and anything to try and get more customers in through your door. We're there and keen to offer you guys. So here we are with a relationship with Ecrotek, and we've had the product range in warehouse for a number of months now, but unfortunately we probably missed the key season last year, being that it landed in sort of late November, early December. So the idea with today was really around trying to give you guys as much knowledge and learning as possible to arm you for the upcoming spring season. One of the challenges we spoke about with internally with something like this is to most of you, it's probably a new segment, and we were really trying to think of ideas on how do we provide that education to you guys as independents to arm you with the knowledge to be able to give you the ability to be able to sell it in store. Most people know someone that's into beekeeping or know someone that does it, but to be able to talk to the range and be able to sell it through is a different story. So hence we're here today, and we've got Ecrotek, 3 key people from the business with us today. They're going to run through a bit of background on the business itself, on the range of products, beekeeping as a whole, and then at the end of the session there'll be an opportunity for some Q&A. So again, to recap, today's a learning opportunity, guys. We can see there's a number of attendees on here. It'll also be recorded as well, so we'll be able to circle back to this. You'll be able to circle back to this for an info session or to show any of your staff if you need to as well. So without further ado, we'll pop the presentation up, and I'll introduce Greg Smith first of all from Ecrotek, who's the CEO, and he may then introduce his colleagues who are on the call as well. Over to you, Greg.
All right. Thanks, guys. Good morning, everyone. I'm CEO of Ecrotek and a shareholder in the company over the last 11 years. I'll give you a little bit of a background about the company, why we're here, and some comparative data out of New Zealand, which is probably relevant, and also why we're in this market and the opportunities that are in front of us. I won't go into the product too much. I'll leave that with Dan and Desmond. If we start on the first page there, if we go to the next page, actually, the next one, we could be 112 years old, about 112 years old. Our roots go back to one of our shareholders' grandfather, and a guy who's been working in the company up until recently is still involved. Not as old as elders, but still with some sort of history. We're a broad supplier and manufacturer into the industry. We're very good at plastics, and we have a lot of molds and injection molding machines and do our own products. So we're able to get product to market relatively cost effectively at good margins, including to our wholesalers. We've been in New Zealand, as I said, all that time. We've also been in Australia for, actually, it's gone on here over the last 10 years or so, or the last 7 years directly, but we've been selling into Australian resellers for a long time, but felt that there was too many opportunities in Australia in the growth Actually, do you want to move down to that next slide, please, Ernest? That would be good. Yeah, so we've covered that. We might go one more slide into, please. Okay, this is looking at the market we're faced here. So I'll refer quite a bit back to the New Zealand market because some of the attributes are similar and some of them are actually quite different too. And some of those are relevant, I think, to the suppliers here. So you'll see the beekeeper numbers here at 668,000 as of 2019. New South Wales is about 45% of all the hives. And then going down in order, we've got Victoria, Queensland after that. South Australia and Tasmania have also got some hives. But our focus really is on those top three states there. We're based in rural New South Wales, so Blaney, Bathurst region there. One of the reasons we got involved with elders initially was we realised we couldn't get around the country very well. Our experience was based in New Zealand dealing with farmlands. Farmlands have about 80 stores in New Zealand. Different challenges in New Zealand. They had to compete against the large commercial suppliers of beekeeping, but in spite of that, through the growth periods in New Zealand, we were selling about just under $2 million a year to those stores, about 20 or 30 of those stores. And that was with a market that was about 1/7 of the recreational market that is in Australia. Australia have a huge number of recreational beekeepers. You'll see those numbers there, 27,000. This is going back 2019. Ernest, can you pop through one more slide to go a bit further through? This is the growth that we've seen over the last few years in Australia. So those hive numbers have gone up to 866,000 over the last few years, and total beekeepers at 49,000. Contrast that with New Zealand with about 7,000 beekeepers. So it would tell you there's 7 times the number of beekeepers in Australia than that. 7 times the number in Australia than that of New Zealand. They're spread all around the place, and New Zealand, Ecrotek can't get to those beekeepers very well. One of the things we've realised is we can't replicate that New Zealand model in Australia very well. They are big volume products that make freight a massive component of the cost of beekeepers. And so we initially paired with elders, which on reflection, it may work for some of the stores, but wasn't ideal for us in that owner-operators, we think, are a much better fit as a reseller of beekeeping gear. If you have what we found in New Zealand and the farmland stores is where you have a store champion, the product will go very, very well. So it just takes one person with an interest in beekeeping, not necessarily a deep knowledge, but an enthusiasm for the market, and meeting those beekeepers to really sell a lot of product. Around those peri-urban areas, Sydney, Melbourne, but even into the Newcastle areas, anywhere there's some sort of nectar feed for bees, which is across most of Australia, you'll be surprised at the number of local beekeepers that you have around you. You may have had some inquiry into stores about beekeeping gear. Just to dwell on that store champion theme, if you have a beehive, I would recommend one of the things that we do internally is you don't have to, but everybody that works for us has a beehive at some stage. We strongly encourage that just to learn the basics of it. Honey is a great product to get and to give away to friends, but it's just a really good hobby to have. And it does help with your understanding and offering of product. So just going back to those numbers again, we can see that the increase has gone up quite substantially through there. We think that 866 number is probably closer to 1 million hives. This is based on registered hives. So if you go down one more slide, please, Ernest. Now, before we came to Australia, we knew that the pollination market was a strong market. The honey industry is basically broken into those that have beehives for pollination and those that do honey. Now, most people do both of those things. Not everyone does pollination, but a lot of our projections for this market come out of the AgriFutures reports on pollination. Now, they tell us that with the plantings in the ground for almonds, macadamias, apples, pears, anything that needs pollination, the requirements are going to go up to 950,000 by 2031. So over the next 5 years, we're expecting around another 350 to 400,000 hives. Now, putting that into dollar terms, those 400,000 hives represent anywhere from $160 to $220 million of purchasing for those hives. Then that'll be beehive bases, boxes, frames, lids, suits, smokers, all the products that go with it. They're relatively big numbers, and they'll be spread right from the big commercial guys who have 10 to 12,000 hives right down to those people with one or two. Now, we tend to focus on the bigger commercial people where we can get truckloads or container loads into customers. But that leaves a massive market for anyone from one or two hives through to 1,000, 2,000 hives that need product locally. It's freight cost effectively, and they need product now. So that's one of the reasons that in discussing this with Corey, Kane and the team, that we felt that AIRR was an ideal partner for us to have in this space. You've got great freight rates around the country, and as I said, when those customers want product, they want it right now. So there's a big space in there, I think, for a reseller network that can effectively get good quality product to customers. Now, these figures were done initially without Varroa. You may have heard of the Varroa incursion that came through Australia. It landed about 3 years ago. Someone had brought it in, and unfortunately, every wild hive in the country will die over the next few years, as it has done across the world. Australia was the last major country to get Varroa. It did well keeping it out. Now, what that means for pollination is there are enormous amounts of crops being pollinated freely by wild bees. Now, people talk about stingless bees, native bees. They really don't do the job that European honeybees do, which is our honeybee that we have in Australia and New Zealand and all around the world. It collects honey and pollinates brilliantly. As those die out, and they're already starting to around New South Wales, those wild hives, they don't come back. Now, what they've found in every country around the world is that demand for pollination hives increases as Varroa goes through and kills out those free pollinating feral hives. We're already hearing stories up in northern New South Wales where Varroa first hit, that crops are starting to fail due to those lack of bees that were previously there. Now, that'll take 2 or 3 years to get it spread around the country. So it's twofold. Varroa will drive further increases. That 950,000 hives that we project, which is roughly around 300,000 short of our current numbers, we think could go up to at least 100,000 additional hives will be required within the pollination that is known, and a lot of other crops, lucerne. I don't have the full list right in front of me at the moment. I think it's on one of the later slides, but a lot of crops that people aren't even aware need commercial pollination hives will start to need them as they find their yields start falling. So that's the first step, is the increase in hive numbers. The second thing that comes out of this is the requirement for Varroa treatments. Now, most countries are not as warm as Australia, and they typically have about 2 synthetic treatments a year. So without those synthetic treatments, the hive will die anything from 6 to 10 months. The hive will be dead with parasite, Varroa parasite. And so there's a huge market there for us in synthetic parasiticides. So they're typically Baverol through Elanco, Amitraz products. There's about 3 or 4 effective. And then some of the market will be around illegal homemade treatments, which have some efficacy, but not as good as the synthetics. So most other countries, 2 treatments a year. We think Australia will be 3 to 4 to 5 treatments per year, given the warmth and therefore the activity in the hive that stays strong throughout the year. We know that many of these beekeepers are collecting honey for 10 to 12 months a year, as opposed to 3 months in other countries. So it's going to be a different scenario for the Australian beekeeper. Sad for them, it's going to add cost and greater bee deaths. But as suppliers into the industry, it's another product that we're going to be able to sell a lot of volume to. Again, in that air network, product needs to be kept under 25 or 30 degrees, depending on which synthetic treatment there is. And when people discover Varroa in their hives, they don't want it tomorrow, they want it yesterday. They want the treatments immediately so they can get them in there and safeguard their hives. So there's a real opportunity, I think, for the air stores to stock those products in their stores to have them readily available. If going through those numbers here, the recreational hive numbers, we're not putting in a dramatic increase there. You can see down the left-hand side at 300,000 for FY26. We think only another 50,000 for the recreational market. The reason we don't think it's going to grow quite as fast as the commercial market is because Varroa will put some people off beekeeping. There's no doubt the growth has slowed down even amongst commercials at the moment. The growth is not there that's been there pre-Varroa. Now, one of the interesting things about that, so whilst we're not going to get the recreational hive number growth, anyone with 50 hives or more is considered a commercial. You can make a reasonable living out of 50 to 100 hives. That market, we think, has to grow even faster than this, because the AgriFutures numbers was a 10-year project that showed us getting to 950 hives over 10 years. Now, the growth effectively stopped for those 3 years since Varroa's come in. So what we see is a backlog of growth that we think will come. Now, it's not quite there yet because a lot of those plantings in the ground are not requiring pollination, and those feral bees aren't dead yet. But when it comes, we believe it's going to come quite quickly, because it'll be based on crop failures, and at that stage the price for pollination will have to rise, and the amount that's being paid to those numbers. So actually, if we just flick that past the previous one, I'm jumping around a bit, apologies for that, but we think $44 million. One more forward, please, Ernest. Yeah, so 44 million for that recreational market. Add to that the commercial market, and we think over $100 million a year totally for that market per year. Sorry, I'm just seeing some questions there. I'll just do we get to those at the end, do we, Ernest? Yeah, okay. All right.
I was gonna ask you if you wanna answer these questions first, or do you want to wait till the end? Actually,
maybe the first one, Greg, I think is probably relevant to what you were just talking about in terms of projections. But Brett's question there around if the pollination hives, if they're mainly commercial operators, how are those growth projections calculated when between 2019 and 22 there was very little growth across those operators?
Yeah. Those growths are a 10-year. They run them through. We can send out that AgriFutures report to anyone that wants to see it. They run through at a 5 and a 10-year period. If you go one further forward, actually, it might be in there, the answer to that. We see that as a backlog. As I said, that last 3-year period since Varroa arrived has scared a lot of the market. So the uncertainty where people are saying, well, am I investing? There's still a few people still expanding, knowing that pollination is going to grow. But most people are saying, well, what cost is this going to add to my operation? How many of my beehives are going to die? I might just sit tight now. So we see that as pent-up demand, really. And that's why we believe that growth has been a bit slow. It's been coupled with historically low honey prices in Australia the last 2 to 3 years, which has also impaired that growth.
We also had, I think this one's pretty simple question. We also had a question in the Q&A section whereby it's to do with Varroa.
Yes.
What damage is Varroa mite expected to make, and how will it impact growth forecast in hives?
There is a production effect. Well, the first effect is death. So if you don't monitor your hives well enough and don't treat them several times a year, they will die. And there's plenty of education out there in the market, but people being people often don't start treating until too late, and the hives are terminal. They will die. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they spread viruses around beehives. The varroa typically don't kill the hive itself. They'll just propagate viruses through the hive until they become so sick they can't look after themselves and die. But that, as I said, though, I think I've answered that question, though, really about that's what slowed the market down, the growth. Some people are brave enough to still be expanding, but as we said, we think that pent-up demand will be hitting over the next 1 to 2 years. Was there any other questions there, Ernest, that I didn't see? I don't have that in front of me.
3 more. There is another 3 more. Did you want to answer them first, or you want to keep going?
I'll probably just keep going and answer those at the end of this part. So that's the addressable market that we have in there. If we go to the next slide.
Sure.
Okay, this is the AgriFutures report, straight from the AgriFutures report. Again, we can make this available to everybody else. The things to note on this really are the honey and beeswax market. We see the increase over the last 4 years of relatively modestly 162 million to 200 million odd as revenue. Through that period, though, the paid pollination services have gone from 40 million to 100 million. So you've got a 150% increase in payments there. So what we see, and you can see this in every other country in the world, pollination becomes the driver for the beekeeping industry. It's true in the States. It's becoming that way in New Zealand, even with high-priced Manuka. It's pollination becomes the driver for revenue around the world. Honey becomes just a support mechanism in terms of earnings. So we would expect, particularly in Australia with imported honey coming in and competing with more higher cost Australian honey, but that paid pollination services, that really needs to double over the next few years. Can we go to the next one, Ernest? Okay, this is probably you, Dan. Can we go back to those questions there, Ernest? Can I just click on the Q&A and that'll bring it up for me? Sure.
Do you want me to bring it up on screen now, or
if you bring it up on screen, I'll just cover those questions that have come up for this.
Sure. 2 seconds. There. Okay. Does it look like the same one here? It's been answered. Give me 2 seconds.
I think there was a question there about the states where varroa is. It's largely through New South Wales now. We think that it's anywhere from 60 to 80% of hives. At least by the end of this season, this summer, it'll be over 90% of hives will require 4 to 5 treatments a year. Some of those will be illegal, or the unregistered oxalic treatments, but the majority of them should be synthetic treatments. It has crossed the border into Victoria in limited places, but with almond pollination coming up soon, I would expect that to be a mass spreading event where that will go throughout Victoria, probably into South Australia. Over the last 2.5 months, they've found it in just outside Brisbane and now into the Brisbane recreational hives. Even bigger demand in Queensland because of the temperature, bee activity throughout the year. So that's a real problem, and it's going to require a lot of varroa treatments throughout that period. But the point on the fear of the numbers is it's just you can't. The certainty of this growth is one of the factors that drive us here. You can't substitute away from commercial beehives. Nothing. People, as I said, talk about stingless bees, but nothing will pollinate like this. And there's about $4 or $5 billion worth of horticultural and agricultural product that's dependent on these honeybees. So there's just no substitute away from having enough of them to do the job for those industries.
So there's other questions here as well. One from Brett here. What channels, is that the one you just answered, the channels one?
Source and to learn about equipment required. How do you stores? Okay, we have more education on our site than anyone else does, really. So we've got the education there. We've got a series on beekeeping for recreational people as well as commercial people. That had been produced in New Zealand, and it does involve Varroa, but it's actually quite relevant to Australia now as well. We have books on it, and our staff are very, very experienced in this. Desmond and Dan has been a commercial beekeeper in both New Zealand and Australia, so he's dealt with Varroa in the New Zealand context. So he's as well placed as anyone in the country to talk about what Varroa means to Australia, because he has that Australian experience. Desmond also keeping bees in both countries. So there's plenty of education that we have there. Also with Varroa treatments, we can supply pamphlets as needed, but we're free for anyone to call us, any supplier, any reseller, to call us just to chat about product. The typical shelf life of Baberol is 5 years. It may be 4 years by the time it gets to some people. It doesn't need to be refrigerated. They've changed the label now, so 30 degrees is the maximum. The other synthetic treatments are 25 degrees. How beekeepers know where to find their local stockers of Ecrotek products? Well, we'll list that. Desmond, you might be able to answer that if we actually have that listed on our site now, and if we'll actually direct customers who are too far away from us to supply to. That we're not very effective at supplying outside our direct area. So Desmond, we'll probably push people to those air stores.
Yeah, just to answer that particular question. So we are right now developing a reseller webpage where all the current air stockers will be listed as our resellers. We're also working with the air team in terms of, because we've got data of beekeepers locally within those areas. So we will be working with air team to see what targeted emails can be sent across to those beekeepers. I might as well answer some more questions there. So yes, the shelf life for Baberol is actually 5 years. So current stock that we have is expiring in 2027. Like Greg mentioned, it needs to be stored under 30 degrees. There was a question from Dave there suggesting, can we sell Varroa, or what states can we sell Varroa treatments into? So we can sell Varroa treatments in New South Wales and Victoria. We're just working with the government of Queensland in terms of how soon can we start selling treatments in Queensland. So these 3 states are particularly where we can sell Varroa treatments now.
So we got another question here from Michael Harridan. Are products in warehouse including treatment?
I think that is directed. I guess that question to air stocking treatments, and the answer is yes to that. I think both Sydney and Brisbane branch has Varroa treatments available.
Cool. Did you want me to go back to the presentation, people?
Yes, please.
I think so. I'll just summarise my bit there, if you don't mind. I really think there's an opportunity here. We are limited as Ecrotek, and that's why we're fortunate, I think, to have this partnership with AIRR. When we looked at our sales prior to these talks with AIRR, what we found was outside every 100 kilometres we go further away from our base, our sales get less and less. And it was an underestimation by ourselves of the size of Australia, the difficulties with freight and the cost of freight. It effectively makes us not effective at getting to those people. I think AIRR is a perfect partner in terms of the amount of stores that cover the country and the amazing freight that you have to get product in a timely, cost-effective way to customers. And the size of the market, as I said, we were at around 2 million, with 1/7 of the place with none of those. Farmlands had none of those advantages that the AIRR store has, and they still managed to turn that into a relatively good product line for a period in New Zealand. Our focus is on the top end commercial people, but anyone through to a few thousand hives, which is actually the majority of the hives in the country, is I think a target for all of the AIRR stores. So I'll hand over to I think Dan's going to take this now.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So yeah, I'm originally from New Zealand, and I'm like a lot of people, I started off as a recreational beekeeper. I basically bought some secondhand gear, I threw it in my back paddock, accidentally caught a swarm, and got some honey, thought this is great, this is super easy, and about 12 months later that hive died from me being quite a poor beekeeper. So the hive itself died of Varroa, and after that I decided to learn how to do it properly, and I took on an informal apprenticeship with a commercial beekeeping company. That company had around 5,000 hives, very experienced beekeepers, qualified beekeepers. There was even a geneticist there doing queen breeding, so I was very fortunate to learn from that company. About 8 years ago I moved over to Australia. I bought about 50 hives. I was also working for another beekeeping company within Sydney as well that was very much retail and online focused. So I'm very much aware of what it takes to get retail businesses across the line and particularly profitable. To give you an idea of scale, at that time that business was probably doing about $4 million in beekeeping sales alone just within Sydney. 80% of that was online. So for those of you that have an online model, would like to explore that model, I can certainly help with that. Now at the moment I've got around 100 hives of my own as well, obviously focusing on Ecrotek as well. Yeah, and that puts me in a pretty good position in order to tell you guys about the opportunities within Australia for beekeeping. As Greg mentioned, Australia was kind of this last Eden within the world for beekeeping. What it used to be is that you could have a hive or two in the backyard and you could more or less leave it alone. You could collect your honey and you didn't have to do too much outside perhaps the odd queen replacement. That was also the same for commercial beekeeping. Guys could increase their hive numbers. They could maybe run 1,000 hives with just one beekeeper, whereas in New Zealand you might need one beekeeper to 100 hives because of Varroa itself. Now that in the first instance scared a lot of people off when Varroa arrived in Australia. However, that's now changing and has presented itself in quite a big opportunity for a lot of people. It has scared off some beekeepers and the ones that have left have basically already done it, and the ones that have now into it have accepted it, and they're certainly moving forward. So if you come back to the treatments that are available, as Greg already mentioned, we've got the Varroa treatments, and it's not just all about chemicals. There's a range of strategies that you have to employ in order to successfully manage Varroa. So before, whereas you could just leave your beehive in your backyard, you now actually have to go in and inspect it to actually test for Varroa, and then also apply these chemicals and organic treatments, as well as some other passive treatments that I'll speak about as well. So for retailers, what that means is that you have regular sales every year, very, very simply. Spring, summer and autumn, your beekeepers will need to purchase chemical treatments from someone. And we're obviously wanting that to be AIRR stores right around the country in a retail focus. So if you look on that slide there, you've got Baverol, which is a chemicals treatments. All these treatments are very safe and easy to use. And to talk about the specifics of that, the beekeeper basically just goes 4 plastic inserts basically that just go into the bottom brood box. They leave them in there for 8 weeks and then they need to remove them. And they work very, very well and super easy. If you want to know more about that, there's specific videos online all over the show. There is some ins and outs within those treatments. Some of those treatments build up in the wax, some of them build up in the honey, and then the one over the back there, Formic Pro, you do need some safety equipment with, as it's a formic acid based treatment, so you can get skin burns and things like that. But that's probably the most dangerous treatments of the lot. But that's all very much all over the actual product packaging and things, and it's basically just safety glasses and nitrile gloves. So that's kind of the chemical treatments, and the beekeepers need to do that 3 times a year, at least within Victoria. New South Wales might be 3 to 4, and Queensland might be up to 5, depending on the area. And to be honest, nobody quite knows what the treatment protocol is going to be in Australia yet, but we do know it's going to be at least 3 treatments a year, depending on the location. Now, if you flick over there over to the hive, yeah, that's fine as well. You've got the Hive Doctor bottom board. Now, that bottom board was specifically designed by Ecrotek for a very particular reason. So I'll briefly go into how Varroa breed and then why this is actually important. So what happens with, you can just have a singular Varroa mite that goes into your hive, catches a ride on a bee, and then goes into the brood, which is essentially just baby bees, and it breeds and parasitizes the larvae. Now, from that one Varroa mite, it would then breed typically into another one and sometimes 2. All right, that Varroa mite then emerges and then hitches a ride on another bee, and it has to stay outside of that bee for a few days before it can breed again. Now, what happens around 20% of the time, that Varroa basically accidentally falls off and then falls down to the bottom of the hive. So when Varroa first arrived in New Zealand, everyone had these kind of flat timber bottom boards, and the Varroa would fall down to the bottom, and then they can just re-hitch a ride back onto the bee, and they can go right back up to the top. So on the Hive Doctor bottom board, there's a mesh screen on it with trays in it, which are optional as well. And the Varroa simply, when it falls off, about 20% of the time it falls through the mesh and into the tray. They're blind and they can only smell, and they can't make their way out back through the mesh and then die. So that's called a passive Varroa control. Ecrotek sold over 300,000 of these bottom boards so far. I think that's in New Zealand, and I'm sure if that includes Australia as well. And today, if you fast forward about 20 years in New Zealand alone, about 90% of beekeepers within New Zealand use some sort of mesh bottom board, be it the Ecrotek ones or homemade ones or other things. So it's this kind of passive control that lots and lots of beekeepers are about, and we're gradually going to see this change over into these bottom boards. So that's one of our best sellers. It's an obvious choice for every single EM member that gets on board with beekeeping. It's very, very easy to use and sell, and it's actually quite affordable in terms of beekeeping bases in Australia as well. Moving on from that, you have nutrition. So just like when anybody else gets sick, and you have your chicken soup or whatever it may be, when you get a cold, it's no different for bees. If like Greg said, if they catch viruses and things, if you have poor nutrition within the hive, then those viruses can overwhelm the bees. So nutrition, and we're already seeing this within New South Wales, particularly amongst commercial beekeepers. We're seeing an uptick in feeding, not of sugar syrup, hive patties. So that becomes important in spring when you're trying to grow the bees and sort of get to honey flows. And you basically just see, it's very easy to use. You just have either a powder that you mix up with sugar syrup, or you can buy the ready-made patties that you pop on top, and you focus on increasing nutrition. Away from that, what I definitely found within Sydney is a lot of recreational beekeepers just like to be able to buy the ready-made thing. They don't want to sort of put in lots of effort of screwing and painting and that sort of thing. Some do. There's definitely a market for that. But if they can just walk in and buy the ready-made thing, the complete build boxes, the kit, and they can just walk out the door, they absolutely will. So on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen there, you see some painted boxes with ready-made waxed frames, and that people can just buy that in kits. So having assembled boxes ready to go, having a variety of frames which are ready to go that people don't have to do too much work in, is a great strategy for retailers to actually get people across the line in terms of the percentage of what you want. There's a growing segment of female beekeepers within the industry as well. It used to be very, very male dominated, and we started to see that, and they just started to come in, and we just saw a large sort of segment of people that didn't want to build anything anymore or paint it. They were short on time, and that sort of spread across the segment. And that's that slide there. I don't know if there's anything more that I need to speak about, or if there's any questions.
Dan, I might just add something to that. That bottom left image you see there, we offer an enormous number of products, 300 or 400, where it gets technical and turns into queen breeding and other things. But basically what you're seeing there is add a suit to that, a beekeeping suit and some gloves, and that's pretty much your core range. That box with some frames, the bottom board, as you see the white, and there's a lid that it's sitting on. You can't see it too well. A queen excluder, a smoker, and a hive tool, and add a suit to it. And that's basically all the person needs. That's really where we've tailored the stocking into the area warehouses is the core range. So, for anyone that's listening to this and gets when you look at our product offering and it can get overwhelming and you think about all the treatments and those things, it doesn't have to be that simple. It's that setup on the bottom left and those treatments, one or two of those treatments that you put in a few times a year. That's really it.
Do we want to go to the next 2 slides, or do you want to take some questions?
Yeah. What are the next couple?
Run the next couple. There you go.
Yeah.
Current air stock is here. And then, thank you. So we'll go straight to Q&A. We had one question where it says that can only be purchased in New South Wales and ACT. Does that need a correction? Is that only for the variety?
It can be sold in Victoria now as well. That's been approved. And Queensland is very, very much pending. I actually thought we could sell into Queensland now.
Okay, I'll just stop sharing that screen for now. We do have another question. Let me just pull it up again. So Brett's asked, in terms of sales, there are many other distributors servicing the market in Australia. Are there many? Are we competing against other brands other than what Ecrotek offers?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like any other business. So, there's specialist beekeeping stores, which you'll be up against. So, for those of you that there's sort of 2 ways you could look at it. You could go down the road of just having the chemicals there and, being a stockist of the varroa treatments, or if you wanted to compete against other stockists, you absolutely could, because there is not a lot of people that have gone very hard behind Ecrotek sort of proprietary products, or the products that we just make ourselves. So when Ecrotek's talking about having you guys on the map as an Ecrotek stockist, and then you're stocking things like our bottom boards and our treatments and all those sorts of products, there's not a lot of people around you that'll have access to those things. So for those of you that want to push hard and get behind some Ecrotek proprietary products, the things that we make, we can set you up with the things that we know that sell very, very well. With a lot of experience in that, and we can look at training. We can set you up with local beekeeping clubs. So you will be able to compete against other beekeeping stores because we actually make this stuff, and they won't have access to some of those products, or a lot of the products that we stock ourselves.
I'll just add to that, if you don't mind. Those products, again, that I showed you before, the bottom boards, for example, for a lot of those stores are mum and pop sort of operators. They don't have the same, or we don't have the same ability to get our product to them cost effectively. So their margins, or their prices at least, will be higher. Those frames that you can see sitting in the box have a special coating of wax that we sell with them that those people won't be able to do. We do those in volume. We can do 10,000 of those a day on our systems. They're produced with a high impact polystyrene, which is food grade. Now, some of those, again, mum and pop operators are consolidating a container out of China that has got dubious levels of plastic in there. Our experience in New Zealand is we've found plasticizers, phthalates, and other things that can get into food and get into honey. And we don't recommend anyone uses any of those plastic products ex-China. So, we produce those in Australia cost effectively. So what we're offering here through our direct sales, but also through the AIRR network is a different level of product typically than they'll be able to offer.
Thank you for that. There was a quick one here. In terms of where 80% of sales are coming from, do you have a suggested range of for stores to stock?
Yes, we do. Yeah, and it is a a monetary amount that sort of depending on how firm you want to do. We had one store that sort of spent probably around $5,000-$6,000, and that got them a reasonable range of gear, including suits and different sizing and a range of frames, different size boxes. There is going into it. There's in Australia. It's not in New Zealand. In Australia, there's an 8-frame box, which means it fits 8 frames, and then there's a 10-frame box, which means it fits 10 frames. So there is some various sizing things. Where if you do push a little bit harder, you can get that full size, and it's actually quite specific to your state. So if you're in Queensland, you're quite lucky. Most people up there are 10-frame. If you're in Tasmania, most people are 8-frame. If you're in New South Wales, there's a mix of about 60% 10-frame and 80% 8-frame, and then again a mix within Victoria. So it's dependent on where your store is. To just basically have a chat with me, I can recommend that, and I've got that sort of minimum stocking rate to give you the best chance of success with our range.
Thank you for that, Daniel. We've got a couple of questions for. One. Let's actually no. We've got 3 more. So one's from Rhonda and Sophie. Is in-store training customer info day with Ecrotek available?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing, and how far you are. I do travel. I'm been around the countryside, probably on the road for the last month doing conferences. And certainly if the orders are coming through and we've got sort of a flagship store that's doing well and has sort of put some money into it, and we've put some signage into the store. We've done it in the past. We've hosted barbecue days and things. We've combined it with local clubs, and if we get 30 or 40 people along, we're happy to do that. But we do need stores that are prepared to sort of to back the product and say yes, we're going to do it. In terms of order volume before we sort of put the expense of putting myself on the road. And ideally, we'd like to do that with a number of stores at the same time. So yes, we do. There just be some sort of conditions to it to make sure it was successful for both parties.
Okay. Cool. I think that also sort of answers a question from Louise Bauer. Would Ecrotek be able to attend information evening in South Australia? In a store called Valhalla for local beekeepers. I think if you were to contact Daniel, that should be fine, Louise. Second last question. Do these treatments become totally useless if shipped above 25 to 30 degrees for 24 to 48 hours?
Yeah, I might. I might cover that one. We really haven't had any failures with temperature control. Now, understanding that there are parts of Australia that will get hot, we dispatch any of our product with an insulated wrap and an ice pack, a couple of ice packs, depending on how big it is. Now, that's the best we can do. What we should be doing is dispatching, or anyone that's sending it was forwarding it to customers, is to wrap it with an ice pack. If it's going to be on the road for a couple of days, and always do fast delivery. Now, I think that you've got similar challenges in vaccines, as far as I understand, that you do the best you can. You certainly keep it below those temperatures in the store when it's dispatched. I don't see that there's much in the way of liability or, in fact, massive impairment to the efficacy of the product if it does just spike above that for a day or two. Remembering a beehive where it's going in is 34 degrees. That's where it's active throughout the day. So that's the core temperature it sits in once it hits the hive anyway. So it's not a big risk, but it's something we need to be careful of. It's also something that we, again, that suits here, because often you'll have those facilities with vaccines that you can keep it at a reasonable temperature. A lot of those other shops that are selling kit don't really know about this, and they don't take the care that we do.
Yeah, we don't sort of like telling people too much, but the manufacturers do have an inbuilt tolerance within the products that they sort of measure, because they've sent them overseas in containers, and they put temperature sensors and things. That sort of tolerance is around 48 hours over that, but we don't want to use that tolerance or sort of stretch it. So, which is hence the reason we wrap it and we put ice packets and things in there for that extra bit of safety.
Cool. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, guys. Cool. I think the last question will probably be on our court. Ken?
Yeah. So there's a question there regarding click and collect for stores. So for our AIRR and Tuckers members, we do have a service that offers that. So the product is still online, and then the customer chooses their nearest store, and then the order goes to that shop. The store then orders the gear from warehouse. That's only for AIRR and Tuckers members. And regarding, I guess, talking to suppliers as a whole. So looking at Ecrotek, for example, if the click and collect question is targeted at them, that's pretty hard for supply to manage normally, because that also involves other stockists and commercial outlets and that sort of stuff as well. So that's not often something a supplier does, to be honest. Otherwise, they would sell direct to consumer, which Ecrotek aren't wanting to do. They're wanting to support physical stores. So, certainly having stock in your four walls will win out. But then, if AIRR and Tuckers members, we can provide that service as far as generating demand and orders. But then, if there are orders that come through, our wholesale clients would order that from our online warehouse and get that added to the top of their pallet. That's as part of the next order.
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually, and a lot of my background is in e-commerce. And when I first started with Ecrotek and we had the sort of elders network, my first question was about click and collect and were elders online and that sort of thing, and generally they weren't. I would love that model where people can use that network, and we can basically put on our website that the entire network of the AIRR and Tucker stores have the entire range available, and we have this sort of network that is just all over the show. It's effectively not all over the show, it's bad wording, but it's spread across Australia, and people have access to the entire range and can be sort of sent out from the warehouse. Do we have the ability to do that right now? I'm not sure, probably not, but it's certainly something that we could work on and would definitely work within Australia from an e-commerce point of view, and I think it would be quite successful as well. So it's certainly something that I'd be pretty keen on.
Yeah, certainly, it's certainly something that we aspire to, because it obviously needs the inventory needs to be accurate. So the retailer has to have the stock, otherwise it doesn't look good for the brand or the store or anyone involved. So yeah, the inventory being accurate and live is critical.
Yeah. Is it fair to say?
It would give AIRR and Tucker stores a unique position where you'd have beekeeping gear spread right across Australia. No one has achieved that so far in Australia, from what I can see.
Yeah, it's one of the things. Is it fair to say that as there's enough of a particular product being sold that would go into stock in the AIRR warehouse? So we're really talking about those more minor products or anomalies that aren't stocked for that click and collect, aren't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, there's a question there from one of our retail stores regarding GP. We can pick that up with them directly, obviously, because GP's at the determination of the store in the main, but we'll pick that with Michael offline.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Very good.
Any more questions from anyone of the attendees? If not, we will be ending it here, actually.
Yeah, in closing, thanks to the Ecrotek team. I think that, as we said from the outset, it's typically a new segment for most of our stores. And Greg, I know when we sat down with Dave and Kane and Jacob 9 or 10 months ago, we really spoke about that. Probably the number one challenge was identifying for these independent stores and owners, identifying that champion in store. And as you rightly said today, you don't need to be an expert. You can start with that select or basic range of product and talk to the range, and then it's about how to identify the opportunities within your area. So I think today goes a long way, a big step forward for us as partners coming into the spring. And for the 15 or 16 attendees on here, I hope it was really valuable. This is recorded, so you can loop it back and play it to anyone in your store.
Yep.
And also, I think there's a question about the presentation itself. It'll be made available to everyone as well. So, in closing, thanks guys for making yourselves available today. I hope it was really valuable to those on the call. It was certainly valuable to us. And thanks to the AIRR marketing team as well for putting it together. Really well done. First of its kind, and might not be the last.
No.
First of many, no doubt.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.